Okay, let's unpack this. In an age where information flows freely, well, so too does its darker counterpart. Disinformation.
Right. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and we're talking about a global phenomenon, really. A sophisticated war waged not with bullets, but with bites, aiming to sway opinions, sow division, and even influence elections.
Absolutely. It's manipulation on a massive scale.
And it's a landscape that's constantly shifting, isn't it? With new players, new technologies emerging, making it harder than ever to tell what's real from what's just, manufactured.
Constantly evolving.
So our deep dive today is all about trying to understand this complex and, frankly, often alarming world of foreign information manipulation and interference, or FIMI, as it's often called.
Precisely. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a whole series of reports, really laying bare this intricate web of FIMI campaigns. We're seeing them target countries across Europe, the United States, Africa, Israel, pretty much everywhere.
A huge scope.
Huge. And we'll explore the actors behind these operations, who's actually doing this, and the cunning tactics they employ. Everything from impersonating trusted news outlets, which is pretty scary, to deploying cutting-edge AI. And we'll look at the profound impact these campaigns have on our societies, on our democracies.
Right.
Our mission today, really, is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from these sources, trying to give you, the listener, a crystal clear picture of what's happening and, crucially, why it matters to you.
And as we navigate these complex waters, we're really grateful for the support of our sponsors. If you're looking for robust solutions to manage digital risk, make sure your data is handled with care. You'll definitely want to check out www.compliancehub.wiki and www.myprivacy.blog.
Yeah, really useful resources in this climate.
Absolutely. They're resources designed to help you and organizations, too, stay informed and secure in this, ever-evolving digital landscape. Okay, now let's dive in. So, to kick us off, let's talk scale. Because you might think of disinformation as, isolated incidents, maybe a few bad actors spreading lies online here and there.
Right, it'd be like trolls in a basement somewhere.
Exactly. But the sources we've got, they paint a dramatically different picture. It's one of highly coordinated, vast operations, almost like a shadow industry, you could say.
It's industrialized.
What really stands out here is just how widespread these campaigns truly are. They're reaching into nearly every corner of the globe.
Indeed. Our sources reveal a truly global battlefield. It stretches across continents. We're seeing these coordinated disinformation campaigns, primarily attributed to suspected Russian actors. That's a big one.
Yeah, they come up a lot.
They do. But we also uncovered significant Chinese operations and even, interestingly, a covert Israeli influence campaign, all targeting a diverse range of nations and, critically, their internal issues.
So hitting those weak spots.
Exactly. It's not just about one country pushing a single message anymore. It's more like a multi-vector attack on information integrity itself.
Okay, so let's start with Russia then, given how frequently they appear in these reports. What are some of their most notable operations? What makes them such a persistent threat?
Well, Russian operations are definitely a multifaceted threat, and they're constantly evolving their tactics. Two major Kremlin-led operations our sources really highlight are Doppelganger and Matryoshka.
Okay, Doppelganger and Matryoshka. Like the dolls.
Kind of, yeah. Doppelganger, for instance, has been described by Meta as, and I quote, the most persistent Russia-based campaign they've ever encountered.
Wow, that's saying something from Meta.
It really is. And the German Federal Foreign Office calls it one of the largest worldwide. This campaign became notorious for its mirroring of legitimate websites.
Mirroring, so like copying them.
Exactly. Picture this. They created anywhere from 70 to a staggering 700 mirror sites of real trusted platforms. We're talking major news outlets, even government sites.
700.
Yep. The aim was to perfectly replicate the look and feel of, say, a major French newspaper or a German government portal, but then inject it with pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian narratives.
Yeah, I see.
The deception lies in the seamless imitation. It makes it incredibly difficult for an unsuspecting user, just browsing online, to tell the difference from the legitimate source.
That's a key distinction, isn't it? It's not just spreading misinformation. It's actively trying to look like a trusted source to gain credibility. It's weaponizing the very trust people place in established media.
Absolutely. That's the core of it.
Yeah.
And then you have Matryoshka, which has been active since at least August or September of 2023. This one employs an even cleverer sort of two-layered sock puppet account strategy.
Okay, layers, like the doll again. How does that work?
Right. So the first layer consists of accounts that seed fake content. We're talking fabricated reports, doctored videos, images of staged graffiti, carefully crafted memes.
Yeah.
The raw material, basically.
The initial fake stuff.
Yeah, the initial, often seemingly innocuous release. But here's where it gets really insidious. A second group of accounts, often using compromised profiles of prominent figures.
Hacked accounts.
Sometimes hacked, sometimes just carefully built fake personas that look real. These accounts then quote this fake material and direct comments to legitimate media outlets, even fact-checkers. They're essentially daring them to investigate.
Wow, so they're trying to bait the media.
Exactly. This multi-pronged strategy has several aims. First, obviously, to widely disseminate these fakes, leveraging both their own networks and legitimate channels they trick. Second, to discredit targets if they inadvertently fall for the fakes and report on them.
Ah, so if a newspaper reports the fake, they look foolish.
Precisely. And perhaps most insidiously, the third aim is to overwhelm the fact-checking community. Tie up their valuable resources, create a sense of information fatigue, make people just throw up their hands.
It sounds like they're weaponizing the very mechanisms meant to debunk them, almost like playing chess with the truth itself.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
And these campaigns, they're truly global in their targeting, right? Not just focused on one region.
Precisely. The scope is just breathtaking. Let's look at some of the specific targets of Russian influence our sources mention. In Europe, countries like France, Germany, Italy, Ukraine, the UK, Latvia, they've all been heavily targeted.
A wide net.
Very wide. The campaigns aim to polarize internal issues, challenge European initiatives supporting Ukraine, exploit existing political crises like the dissolution of the French Assembly back in June 2024 or ongoing German federal elections.
So piggybacking on real events.
Always. The consistent narratives portray national leaders as, forgetting their own people's problems because they're focused on Ukraine. They push the idea of an inevitable military collapse for Ukraine, encourage surrender as the only logical path to peace.
Playing on war weariness.
Exactly. And in Germany specifically, narratives frequently target the Green Party. They spread climate change denial, amplify anti-vaccine sentiments, push pro-Russian views on the Ukraine war, often leveraging existing societal tensions. They're not just fabricating stories, they're pouring accelerants on existing societal fissures.
It sounds like they're identifying existing cracks in a society and then just prying them wider, turning internal debates into sources of external instability.
That's it, exactly.
But it's not just Europe, is it? The United States is also firmly in their sights, using some truly, bizarre and diverse tactics from what I gather.
Oh, indeed. Foreign information operations have targeted all 50 U.S. states and the District of Columbia, all of them.
Every single state.
According to the sources, yes. And these operations have incredibly diverse objectives. Undermining political opponents, cultivating support for specific initiatives, or sometimes just facilitating state propaganda. It's not always about one specific outcome.
It's causing chaos sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. Stirring the pot. For instance, we've seen the Chinese state-linked network Spamouflage targeting Republican representatives like Barry Moore, Marsha Blackburn, Marco Rubio, Michael McCall.
Specific names.
Very specific. Using anti-Semitic language, accusing them of corruption, promoting opposition candidates. And these efforts were often amplified by both legitimate users who got fooled and, of course, bot accounts, making it really difficult to discern the true origin.
And it's not just China targeting the U.S., right? The U.S. seems like a particular melting pot for various influence campaigns.
Absolutely. It's a prime target for many actors. A covert Israeli campaign, for example, reportedly active from October 2023 to the present, has targeted U.S. lawmakers. Senator Ben Cardin from Connecticut was mentioned specifically.
And what was the goal there?
The objective seemed to be cultivating support for specific Israeli initiatives, distracting from negative narratives, degrading adversaries, and they frequently employed AI-generated imagery and inauthentic news sites to create that veneer of legitimacy.
AI again.
We'll see that a lot. And then, of course, there are the long-standing activities of the Russian Internet Research Agency, the IRA. They famously purchased thousands of Facebook ads just to stoke division.
I remember that.
Right. Remember the 2016 campaign that promoted counter-protests against the Westboro Baptist Church in Kansas? Or how they exploited the Dakota Access Pipeline controversy? They amplified both pro- and anti-pipeline narratives through accounts like Native Americans United.
Both sides. Why?
Because the goal often isn't to push a specific stance. It's just to create chaos, division,
Yeah.
parrot the social fabric, make people angry at each other.
So they're not necessarily pushing a single ideology, but rather fueling any existing conflict regardless of the issue if it serves to sow discord.
Exactly. That's a key takeaway. And the examples just keep piling up in the U.S. context. We've got a Russian-linked troll factory orchestrating online hoaxes about chemical explosions in Louisiana way back in 2014, long before AI was, this common.
Pre-AI manipulation.
Right. More recently, in 2024, they've been using AI-enhanced websites posing as American newspapers. Boston outlets were mentioned, for example, to smear political figures and polarize public opinion.
Fake local news.
Yep. Pro-Russian X accounts also stoked fear about the Ohio train disaster in February 2023 with a barrage of conspiracy theories, preying on people's anxieties during a real crisis.
Exploiting tragedy.
Absolutely. There was even a Russian state-backed troll farm based in Ghana, believe it or not, called Eliminating Barriers for the Liberation of Africa, EBLA.
In Ghana, targeting the U.S.
Yes, amplifying divisive racial narratives in the U.S. and even attempting to hire on-the-ground activists in South Carolina. That's a clear attempt to move from purely online manipulation to real-world action.
Wow.
Russian state-linked actors also exploited the 2020 Portland unrest with deceptively edited videos to further stoke division. And looking ahead, our sources indicate Russia created fake videos of voter assaults in Wisconsin for November 2024 and depicted ballots being destroyed in Pennsylvania for October 2024.
Targeting election integrity directly.
Very directly. These are very specific campaigns designed to undermine confidence in democratic processes at critical moments.
It's truly a broad canvas of manipulation, touching on, every conceivable point of friction. What about Ukraine and Israel specifically? How are the narratives tailored for them?
In Ukraine, the campaigns are laser-focused on weakening morale, both among citizens and soldiers. They push this perception of inevitable military collapse, promoting surrender as the only viable option.
Psychological warfare.
Pure psychological warfare. The Social Design Agency's Comprehensive Counter-Campaign Against Ukraine, or CCU, is a prime example. This initiative aims to discredit President Zelensky and the Ukrainian government, exploit mistrust among elites, and promote a Kremlin-backed movement called Other Ukraine to influence Ukrainians whether they're in Russia, Europe, or even potentially within Western Ukraine itself.
Trying to create an alternative power structure, almost.
Or at least the illusion of one. For Israel, the narratives are specifically adapted to undermine U.S.-Israeli relations. They framed the Biden administration as supporting anti-Semitic activities and blame economic struggles on the ongoing war and what they call alleged Western abandonment.
Specific example.
One example given in the sources was these unfounded claims circulating about U.S. stores selling Hamas or Hezbollah merchandise. Completely baseless, but designed to inflame anti-American sentiment within Israel or among its supporters.
And we also saw mentions of Africa, which, you're right, is often less visible in Western reporting on disinformation. What's happening there?
Yeah, it's important not to overlook Africa. Our sources indicate that AI disinformation has been empirically proven on the continent. Definitely happening. National elections especially are prime targets for destabilization efforts.
Makes sense. High-stakes moments.
Exactly. While it's maybe less monitored outside of election periods, one really compelling example is an AI-generated audio recording that surfaced in Sudan back in March 2024. It purported to show a secret meeting discussing a military coup.
A deep fake audio.
A deep fake audio, yeah. It was widely disseminated before eventually being removed from social media platforms, but it highlights the very real, immediate impact such sophisticated fakes can have on political stability and public order. It's a stark reminder these aren't just abstract digital skirmishes. They have real-world consequences.
Definitely. Okay, shifting focus a bit now to Chinese operations. Beyond that spamouflage network you mentioned, what else do our sources tell us about their reach and maybe their unique approaches?
Well, beyond the extensive scamouflage network, our sources reveal a more perhaps subtle yet equally concerning approach from some Chinese actors. For instance, a Chinese marketing firm, Shanghai Hexun Technology, actually commissioned at least 2 protests in Washington, D.C. in 2022.
They commissioned protests. How?
By using freelance platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, they hired unwitting Americans to organize and report on these events.
Unwitting, so the people organizing didn't know who was paying them?
Often not, no. Imagine, like, a 24-year-old musician in Baltimore, hired for $1,500 supposedly to report on a religious freedom summit, conduct interviews, only to be later asked to stage a small protest. These individuals often had no idea they were part of a larger foreign influence operation.
That's incredibly sneaky.
It is. And even though these protests drew minimal crowds, sometimes just a handful of people, the firm, Huaxin, amplified their coverage significantly. They published press releases distributed to legitimate American news outlets, used bot accounts to make the protests seem larger and more impactful online. In one instance, they even paid an American just $10 via Fiverr simply to share a video of one of these tiny protests.
$10. Wow.
It illustrates a very grassroots and covert approach to foreign influence, literally leveraging the gig economy.
Turning ordinary citizens into unwitting pawns, essentially.
Pretty much. Another notable Chinese campaign amplified that false claim that the COVID-19 pandemic originated from Maine lobsters back in September 2021.
I vaguely remember that one.
Lobsters. Yep. Maine lobsters. This claim was shared by over 550 Twitter accounts in multiple languages: English, Spanish, French, Polish, Korean, Latin, almost simultaneously. Chinese government officials and state-controlled media then repeated this false claim.
What was the goal there? Just confusion.
Well, the goal seemed to be not just spreading a lie, but deflecting blame for the pandemic's origins and sowing confusion. When it comes to NATO, China's messaging focuses heavily on portraying its own strength while consistently depicting the U.S. as weak, corrupt, and aggressive.
Undermining alliances.
Exactly. Narratives claim that NATO actions in the Indo-Pacific are based on a Cold War mentality, that they'll disturb regional dynamics and aim to vilify, bully, or destabilize the region. Our sources noted a striking co-occurrence of certain phrases in their communications: Cold War mentality, vilify, bully, insertion, exclusive club, destabilize.
A very specific vocabulary of delegitimization.
Very specific, yes. Their approach is clearly about undermining perceived threats and bolstering their own image internationally.
It's clear they're trying to delegitimize and sow doubt wherever they can. And finally, there are other less attributed foreign actors involved too, right? It's not just the big state players like Russia and China.
That's right. We shouldn't forget them. Our sources also point to networks of faux local news sites, like those found in Indiana, apparently operating from 2000 right up to the present.
Fake local news again?
Yes. These sites create this illusion of local legitimacy, often mimicking familiar local news formats perfectly, but they're actually laundering Russian and Chinese state media, making foreign propaganda appear to be trusted local reporting.
That's dangerous.
Very. Additionally, foreign cybercriminals have reportedly used Wyoming shell companies for global hacking campaigns targeting media companies, specifically noted between September and December 2023. This highlights the deliberate use of opaque corporate structures, seemingly legitimate businesses set up in places like Wyoming, to facilitate malicious activities and obscure their true origins. Makes them incredibly hard to trace and shut down.
Right. Okay, so it's not just who's doing it, but how. These sources detail some incredibly sophisticated methods, far beyond just a simple fake news article. They're leveraging everything from, linguistic nuances to deeply deceptive digital content. Knowing who is behind these campaigns is one thing, but understanding how they actually pull it off. That's where the true ingenuity and the real challenge for us lies. What's the most surprising tactic you encountered in these reports?
That's a great question. And for me, it really comes down to the sheer adaptability of their tactics. They're constantly shifting to circumvent countermeasures. But a core and increasingly sophisticated tactic is just outright impersonation.
Impersonation?
Yeah. We've seen this with fake videos falsely impersonating respected media outlets like Bild and Der Spiegel in Germany, or articles mimicking major French media like Le Parisien and Le Point. In Ukraine, articles impersonating Union and Hotel. In the U.S., fake news aggregators posing as outlets like Fox News, The Washington Post, even local papers like the Boston Globe or the Indianapolis Post.
You're targeting trusted brands directly.
Exactly. And these aren't just fake stories slapped onto a basic web page. They're often created as mirror sites, designed to look almost identical to the real thing. They draw on the immense credibility of the legitimate source. They're not just creating a fake story, they're building an entire fake infrastructure to host it. That makes it extremely difficult for an average user to detect the deception.
So they're essentially digitally cloning trusted brands to poison the well. That's deeply cynical. How subtle are their methods? Are there any, linguistic tells, ways you can spot these fakes?
You've hit on a key point there. Sometimes, yes. The editorial style often provides clues. Articles frequently show hallmarks of non-native writing, strongly suggesting probable translation from, say, a Slavic language, most likely Russian in many cases.
Like awkward phrasing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could often spot occasional grammatical calque, where sentence structures are literally translated from one language to another, deviating from standard norms in the target language. So a French sentence might have a structure that's grammatically okay in Russian, but sounds awkward or unnatural in French. And the narrative design itself is also very deliberate. Articles are specifically, quote, designed to show that the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Ukraine, and Israel are forgetting the problems of their own people and concentrating on supporting Ukraine.
The consistent theme.
Very consistent. They use recurring themes like economic failure in Germany. You'll constantly see keywords like Wirtschaft, economy, and recession linked to negative outcomes. There's a consistent focus on the war's catastrophic impact, alleged incompetence of leaders like Zelensky, and promoting peace through concessions, all designed to resonate with specific pain points in the target countries.
So it's about tapping into existing anxieties and biases then, rather than trying to create completely new ones out of thin air. They're finding the raw nerves and pressing on them.
Exactly. Content is often explicitly designed to incite fear and hostility, frequently by portraying migrants as criminals or burdens on society. The goal is to create a general sense of crisis and internal division.
Not an example.
Yeah. One particularly chilling example from our sources describes a narrative using the phrase, for many of them, the ultimate dream during the pre-Christmas season was to receive food vouchers from Santa Claus.
Wow.
It's deliberately crafted to evoke a sense of dire economic hardship and public despair, blaming it on current government policies or, the support for Ukraine. It's an incredibly manipulative emotional appeal.
That's a highly targeted emotional punch designed to provoke strong reactions. What about visual content? That seems to be where AI truly comes into play, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This is a rapidly growing and deeply concerning area. We see widespread use of doctored images and videos. Beyond those fake videos impersonating Bild and Der Spiegel, there are examples like the one depicting ballots being destroyed in Pennsylvania in October 2024, a clear attempt to undermine faith in elections.
Right.
But then we move into deepfakes, which are far more sophisticated. Remember that example of a deepfake posing as Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, engaged in a Zoom call with Senator Ben Cardin, asking pointed questions about the 2024 election?
That's terrifying.
It really is. This wasn't just a voice imitation. It was a visual and auditory replica convincing enough to fool an experienced lawmaker, at least initially. Another viral video, spread across TikTok, X, Telegram, VK, claimed the Immortal Regiment that Russian Patriotic Initiative had returned to Berlin. It showed digitally altered billboards that a German marketing company quickly confirmed were totally fake.
But people shared it widely first.
Of course. And from Africa, we have that AI-generated audio recording in Sudan, the one purporting to show a secret meeting about a military coup. These deepfakes are becoming incredibly convincing, making it nearly impossible for the average person to discern authenticity without specialized tools or a healthy dose of skepticism.
And AI is making these fakes not just better, but also more prevalent, right? Essentially democratizing disinformation creation.
Yes, exactly. AI-generated imagery is now used not just for fake videos and avatars, but for general content creation. It accelerates production and blurs the lines between reality and fabrication even further. And the sheer variety of content is also striking. Everything from short social media posts, often around 1,000 characters with accompanying videos, to longer articles of 2,000 to 5,000 characters, hundreds of caricatures, many targeting figures like Zelensky, even detailed graffiti ideas for specific conflicts.
Graffiti ideas. Seriously.
Seriously. They have, in essence, a full-fledged, highly sophisticated media production studio behind them, but operating entirely in the shadows.
So once they have this content, this sophisticated, often AI-generated material, how do they actually get it out there? What are the main dissemination strategies that make these campaigns so pervasive?
Well, dissemination heavily relies on social media amplification. This involves extensive use of vast bot networks and those sock puppet accounts we discussed, fake online identities designed to appear legitimate.
The army of fakes.
Pretty much. For example, remember the Maine lobsters in COVID claim? Over 550 Twitter accounts were observed sharing identical messages about it. These posts are often amplified in synchronized bursts across multiple platforms, simultaneously X, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Telegram, VK, OK, Bluesky, wherever they can get traction.
A coordinated flood.
Exactly. An alarming instance noted in our sources was 23 identical Facebook posts about Ukrainian wheat being packed with toxins and pesticides, all detected as AI generated, with another 211 similar texts appearing across various platforms. The sheer volume alone makes it incredibly challenging to track and counter manually.
That's a huge volume. It makes it almost impossible for human fact-checkers to keep up, surely. And they're not just relying on organic reach or bots, they're paying for it too, right?
Correct. Paid advertising is a significant component. It allows them to precisely target specific audiences based on demographics, interests, location. All the data platforms collect. We've seen substantial sums spent, like that $50,000 USD, over just 2 months for doppelganger activities on platforms like Facebook, potentially reaching millions of users.
50 grand in 2 months.
Yeah. And the Russian Internet Research Agency, the IRA, notoriously purchased over 3,500 Facebook ads specifically for division-stoking content during critical periods like elections. They also engage in what's called influencer co-optation.
Getting influencers involved.
Yes, sometimes unwittingly, using those freelancers hired through Upwork or Fiverr to organize protests or share videos, as we discussed. Individuals hired to participate in or record seemingly legitimate events, only for their content to be repurposed and amplified as part of a foreign influence affinate. Or, as in one case mentioned, contracting actual content creators with large audiences, like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, who are apparently unaware of the Russian backing for their media company.
So the influencers themselves might not even know.
Sometimes, yes. Although the social design agency's approach to managing influencers, according to the leaks, seems somewhat outdated, treating them primarily as distribution channels rather than fostering genuine relationships. Still, it serves their purpose by leveraging existing reach.
It's clear these actors are investing heavily in these sophisticated methods to get their messages out, blending right into the digital landscape. And this really highlights a critical point for all of us, the importance of digital literacy, but also protecting our online footprint. This is exactly where a resource like www.myprivacy.blog comes in. It offers really practical advice on safeguarding your personal information and understanding how your online behavior might be subtly tracked or even exploited.
That's incredibly important, yeah. Another insidious tactic involves developing these sleeper regional groups, particularly proposed for Ukraine and the U.S.
Sleeper groups, like spies.
Sort of, but online communities. These groups are developed slowly over time, typically at least 4 months, the sources say, through targeted advertising and organic reach. They gain a seemingly authentic audience while remaining dormant, just posting neutral or community-focused content.
Building trust.
Exactly. Then, at a right moment, often during a crisis or a sensitive political event, they are suddenly activated. They become rapid response channels for disseminating information beneficial to the Russian side. A prominent example mentioned is the Morning Dagestan Telegram channel, which suddenly became a key amplifier during riots there.
Wow. Patient and strategic.
Very. Lastly, operatives engage in targeted comments, often on behalf of bots, according to a predefined media map they follow. They jump into comment sections, promoting specific narratives, and try to evoke strong emotional responses. Things like, Americans are such scumbags. On posts, they want to disrupt or influence. This granular level of engagement further normalizes and amplifies the disinformation, making it appear as if it's coming from real angry people.
Okay, so beyond the how, let's get back to the what. What specific narratives are these campaigns pushing? And crucially, how do they hook us? How do they play on our existing beliefs and anxieties and actually turn them against us?
Right, that's a crucial question, because the narratives aren't random. They're very carefully crafted to exploit existing societal fractures and leverage our inherent cognitive biases, the shortcuts our brains take. They typically fall into several categories, starting with polarizing internal issues.
Like driving wedges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Economic hardship is a huge recurring theme. They consistently blame ongoing conflicts, or maybe Western inaction, for inflation, poverty, rising living costs. For instance, narratives pushed in Israel claim things like, over 28.7% of Israelis are living in poverty, playing directly on genuine economic concerns people have.
Tapping into real pain points.
Precisely. In Germany, economic failure in Germany is a frequent theme. They constantly use keywords like Wirtschaft, economy, and recession to link Germany's support for Ukraine directly with domestic economic woes. This taps directly into people's daily struggles, providing a convenient, often completely false scapegoat.
So it's a classic tactic. identify real problems people are facing, and then provide a simple, often fabricated explanation or villain to blame.
Exactly that. Migration is another huge area they consistently weaponize. Dominant narratives frame migrants as a threat to Europeans' health, their wealth, their identity. False stories portray them as violent criminals or burdens on society, explicitly designed to incite fear and hostility.
We saw that with the Dublin example, right?
Yes, vividly. In the UK, after an incident in Southport, a knife attack was falsely linked online to undocumented migrants, leading to widespread protests and even violence. A very similar dynamic unfolded in Dublin, Ireland, after another knife attack, with false claims immediately blaming Muslim immigrants, sparking actual riots.
Triggering real-world violence based on lies.
Yes. These narratives also push unfounded claims that migrants receive disproportionate social benefits, or that locals are being evicted to make room for newcomers, or are treated like second-class citizens. These messages feed directly into pre-existing xenophobia and anxieties about social change, amplifying them to extreme, dangerous levels.
So, they're not necessarily creating the anxieties from scratch, but rather seizing on and amplifying them to create divisions and destabilize communities. It's like pouring gasoline on embers.
Precisely. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
In Germany, climate change denial is another key narrative pushed, particularly by groups associated with the AfD party, which often acts as a primary promoter. They openly question scientific consensus, attack renewable energy projects. These narratives often align neatly with U.S. climate change denial campaigns, sometimes exacerbated by figures like Donald Trump spreading similar messages, creating this kind of transatlantic echo chamber of denial.
Interesting connection there.
Yeah. And tied to this, often appealing to similar groups, is the amplification of anti-vaccine sentiments. Fueled partly by developments in the U.S., like, say, the appointment of Robert Kennedy Jr. as health secretary, these narratives trigger fear of compulsory vaccination, question public health measures generally. Germany, with its strong tradition in alternative medicine, provides particularly fertile ground for such narratives to take root and spread rapidly.
Okay, so beyond these specific internal issues, what about their broader efforts to undermine trust in institutions? That seems to be a really foundational goal for many of these campaigns.
Oh, absolutely. That's a central objective. They constantly push narratives of government incompetence and corruption. Articles highlight leaders supposedly forgetting the problems of their own people, or focus intently on alleged corruption in, say, the Ukrainian army's procurement processes, all designed to erode faith in leadership, make people cynical.
Make people give up on the system.
Pretty much. Electoral integrity is also a major target. They disseminate false claims of electoral fraud, vote manipulation, often portraying specific parties, like the AfD in Germany, as perpetual victims of a rigged system. The aim isn't just to contest one election result, it's to discredit democratic institutions and processes themselves, making people question the very foundations of their governance.
Attack the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly. Efforts also extend to international alliances, trying to, as one source put it, rip Israel out of the general Western anti-Russian agenda, or demonizing NATO as an exclusive Western club with a Cold War mentality that only destabilizes and interferes in regional affairs. The goal is clearly to isolate nations and weaken collective security arrangements.
And it all relies on understanding human psychology, doesn't it?
Yep.
What are the key psychological manipulation tactics they employ that make these narratives, well, stick, make them so effective?
What's fascinating, and frankly a bit disturbing here, is how deeply they seem to understand human behavior and how our brains are wired. They exploit what psychologists call motivated reasoning. That's our tendency to accept information, even false information, if it aligns with our pre-existing views, our identity, regardless of its accuracy.
We believe what we want to believe.
Essentially, yes. Disinformation thrives by appealing directly to our existing pain points and centers of heightened social and political tension, basically confirming what people already suspect or fear. Then there's the illusory truth effect.
Illusory truth.
Simply put, repeated exposure to disinformation, even if it's from less credible sources, increases its perceived truthfulness over time. If you see or hear something often enough, even if you initially dismiss it, your brain starts to process it as more plausible. It's like that broken record analogy eventually. It just starts to sound familiar, maybe even harmonious.
That's a brilliant way to put it. Repetition eroding our defenses.
Exactly. They also exploit confirmation bias, our tendency to seek out information that confirms what we already believe. They achieve this by referencing widely publicized past events, like the 2015-2016 Cologne sexual assaults in Germany, were mentioned as an example to reproduce fear, anger, and prejudice, even when the current facts don't actually support the claims they're making now. It's about associating current events with past traumas and anxieties to trigger an emotional response.
Linking present fears to past ones.
Precisely. And ultimately, many of these campaigns are designed simply for polarization. They aim to force individuals to pick sides on legitimate concerns: personal security, economic uncertainty, fairness, identity. By amplifying these divisions, they reinforce the notion of irreconcilable differences within society, making common ground seem impossible, maybe even undesirable. This isn't just about winning an argument online. It's about tearing the social fabric and turning citizens against each other.
Okay, so if these are the messages and these are the methods, who's actually building the digital roads for all this traffic? We're talking about the backbone of these operations, the hidden infrastructure, the shadowy organizations pulling the strings behind the curtain.
Right. This brings us to a crucial point. It's not just about the content you see. It's about the bulletproof networks and the organizational structures that enable these campaigns to persist, even despite global efforts to shut them down. These are highly resilient, often deliberately covert systems.
Bulletproof networks.
That's the term sometimes used. When we look at the hosting and network providers involved, one key player identified in our sources is Care and Partner Hosting Ltd. Their website, alltalk.com, shared technical details, MX Records specifically, with another site, alltalk.net. Now, the second site was associated with an autonomous system, ASN 23727, named Daniel Yevchenko, apparently based in Ukraine.
Okay.
Although that specific system is now offline, a Telegram account, Daniel Y, is reportedly still actively used to rent servers, directly linking back to this Daniel Yevchenko figure.
So even if one part of their infrastructure gets taken down, they seem to have other, perhaps seemingly disconnected pieces ready to fall back on. Makes them incredibly difficult to fully dismantle, doesn't it?
Precisely. It's like whack-a-mole. This Daniel Yevchenko is explicitly linked to multiple autonomous systems, including ASN's 23727 and another one, 215428, named Mikhaila Skorobolatko. These ASNs were extensively used in previous doppelganger operations, specifically for what's called first redirection purposes.
First redirection? What's that?
It means they were the initial points of contact for users clicking a link, before being quickly redirected to the actual fake site. It has a layer of obfuscation. This pattern suggests a strong, persistent partnership with Care, hosting maybe like a digital supply chain providing these essential, difficult-to-trace services. Most networks used for these initial redirections either belong or used to belong to this Yevchenko individual, making him seem like a central figure in this dark digital underbelly.
Wow, a key facilitator.
Seems like it. Beyond that specific network, our sources also reveal that foreign cybercriminals have reportedly used Wyoming shell companies for global hacking campaigns targeting media companies. This was specifically noted between September and December 2023.
Wyoming shell companies. Why Wyoming?
Well, Wyoming has historically had relatively lax requirements for company formation, making it attractive for creating opaque corporate structures. It points to the deliberate use of seemingly legitimate business setups in permissive jurisdictions to mask malicious activity and obscure the true origins of the funds and operations.
That's a significant layer of obfuscation, using the very legal and financial systems of other countries against them.
What about the organizational structures themselves? How are these ops actually coordinated at a strategic level? Who's calling the shots?
This is where the state-level involvement becomes strikingly clear, particularly regarding Russia. Leaked documents reveal that two entities, the Social Design Agency, SDA, and another called Struktura, operate essentially as a single entity for Kremlin-commissioned information influence campaigns.
SDA and Struktura. Yes. And these campaigns are particularly those steered by Sergei Kiriyenko, who is Putin's first deputy chief of staff. That indicates a direct line to the highest levels of Russian power.
So not rogue actors.
Far from it, according to these leaks. SDA apparently handles the project management and content production. Think of them like a sophisticated, if nefarious, PR firm. Structural, on the other hand, provides the more advanced IT capabilities, the technological backbone for these operations. What's even more revealing is that they appear to rig government procurement competitions to create an illusion of fair bidding, ensuring they consistently win the contracts for these influence operations.
Rigging bids. So it's a sophisticated, almost corporate-level operation, but designed purely for state-sponsored manipulation.
That's a fascinating and yet chilling insight into the actual machinery of disinformation. Exactly. The Russian state's direct involvement is highly suspected beyond just SDA and Struktura. Von Telekom, a state-founded telecommunications provider directly under the Russian Ministry of Defense, allegedly provided IP addresses used for doppelganger infrastructure. This isn't just a rogue group. It appears to have direct state backing and resources.
State resources behind it.
And the decision-making seems highly centralized within the Kremlin. Alexander Dmitrovich Karyachev, often referred to as ADK, who's Putin's aide and a project director, reportedly dictates strategy directly to SDA. He often demands specific things like infographics and creative ways to present information, even casualty figures, showing a high degree of top-down control over the messaging.
Micromanaging the propaganda.
Seems like it. And another figure, Sofia Avramovna Zakharova, head of the Department for the Development of Information and Communication Technologies, manages the financial and administrative operations and collects all the statistical data for reporting directly back to the presidential administration. It's a well-oiled machine, seemingly from top to bottom.
This sounds incredibly top-down and organized, far more than just, a few individuals in a basement somewhere. Are researchers actually able to map these hidden networks, and how effective are they at disrupting them?
Yes, research efforts are actively monitoring these so-called bulletproof network providers. The aim is to map their complete infrastructure, try to understand how it all connects, and ultimately block them to anticipate a wider range of threats. It's like trying to map a constantly shifting underground labyrinth, though.
A difficult task.
Extremely. But actionable intelligence does come out of this. Our sources include lists of specific autonomous system numbers, ASNs, associated with these providers. Names like Partner Hosting Ltd, Ycor Ltd, Mikhaila Skorobohatko, Karina Rashkovska, and PSB Hosting Ltd keep appearing. They also track numerous spoofing domains used for the fake sites, like union.cx, obizruvedel.ltd, leparisian.afi, thepoint.top, walla.top, spiegel.cx, and welt.pm. Exactly. The goal isn't just to identify these individual components, but to understand their interconnectedness. That allows for more strategic disruption, hopefully, rather than just playing whack-a-mole with individual websites as they pop up.
This level of organization and the deliberate use of this opaque infrastructure, it truly underlines the challenge we're facing. It's not just about what you might see scrolling through social media, but these complex hidden systems that underpin it all, making it incredibly difficult to identify and counter effectively. For any organization, really, understanding this kind of digital risk and ensuring their own systems are compliant and secure is absolutely paramount. This is precisely why resources like www.compliancehub.wiki are so vital. They provide essential guidance on how to navigate these complex digital terrains and protect your infrastructure from being inadvertently exploited or compromised by these kinds of threats.
Okay, let's talk about AI. Artificial intelligence, it's everywhere these days, isn't it? Impacting everything from healthcare to how we watch movies. So it's really no surprise it's being woven into these disinformation campaigns. But how much of a game changer is it really? Is it just making the old tricks faster and cheaper, or is it fundamentally altering the landscape of manipulation, making it an entirely new kind of battlefield?
That's a critically important question right now. AI is certainly a force multiplier. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But its role is actually quite nuanced. It absolutely accelerates things, it helps scale operations, and it drastically lowers the cost of creating convincing content. It's definitely blurring the lines between truth and fabrication in ways we've never really seen before.
Yeah, the deepfakes alone are mind-blowing.
Exactly. But interestingly, it also introduces new vulnerabilities for the actors using it, which is a fascinating area to analyze. Let's look at AI's capabilities first, though. Automated content production is a massive benefit for these malicious operations. Generative AI models can create sophisticated text, audio, visual content incredibly rapidly and at minimal cost compared to traditional methods.
Like having an instant propaganda writer and artist.
Pretty much. This includes AI-generated text, images, and deceptively edited images and video, all designed to enhance what we call persuasion campaigns, tailoring messages much more effectively to specific segments of an audience based on their data.
So it's not just automating basic tasks like translating text, it's automating the creation of highly convincing, tailored content that can potentially bypass our innate skepticism more easily.
Exactly. And this allows for massive scaling of operations. AI enables the rapid creation of unique-sounding or unique-looking content. This facilitates large-scale coordinated activities, like populating social media networks with artificially coordinated prototypes of real users, making bot networks seem more human. Or producing those repetitive posts with subtle variations, like the Ukrainian wheat pesticide narrative we talked about.
Right, spreading it across multiple languages almost instantly.
Yeah, German, French, Dutch, Romanian.
Yeah.
With variations generated by AI to appear unique, but ultimately stemming from the same core false message. Imagine the resources and time that would have taken just a few years ago. It would have been prohibitive.
And deepfakes are perhaps the most visually striking and, frankly, unsettling example of AI's power here. That Kaliba example you mentioned earlier is a perfect illustration of the potential for deception.
Indeed. AI is integral to creating these highly convincing deepfakes of individuals. It's making it increasingly difficult to detect that, say, the preceding text is also AI-generated, or that the person you're seeing on screen isn't who they appear to be at all. Experts we looked at predict that the pipeline of deepfakes will soon escalate.
A pipeline? Sounds ominous.
It means we should expect an increasing volume and sophistication of these fakes flooding the information space, requiring extreme vigilance and much more advanced detection methods from all of us. Beyond just direct content creation, Russian actors are also reportedly exploring something called LLM grooming.
LLM grooming, what's that?
LLM stands for Large Language Model, the engines behind tools like ChatGPT. Grooming, in this context, means injecting propaganda or biased material directly into the training data of these models.
Tampering with the AI's education.
That's a perfect way to put it. Imagine subtly altering the historical records of student studies. Their future understanding will be inherently biased, perhaps without them even realizing it. The goal here is to subtly shape the outputs of these AI tools themselves, affecting the very digital instruments audiences use every day, rather than directly targeting them with a specific piece of content. It's a longer-term, much more insidious strategy, influencing the very source of information generation.
Poisoning the well at the source.
Exactly. And ultimately, AI can also just accelerate capability building in general. It can increase the speed at which new software and services are developed, specifically for influence operations, creating a kind of technological arms race in the shadows.
That's a scary thought. AI creating better AI for disinformation. It sounds like an endless loop. But surely there must be challenges and vulnerabilities for the actors using AI as well, right? It can't be a magic bullet that makes them invincible.
No, it's certainly not. And that's important to remember. Despite advancements, AI detection tools for both text and images still struggle significantly with complexity, and they can have inherent biases themselves. This makes it hard to efficiently validate large data sets, leading to both false positives, flagging human content as AI, and false negatives, missing AI content.
So the detection tools aren't foolproof.
Not by a long shot. Some models misclassify human text as AI-generated quite often, or they fail to reliably detect AI-generated texts, especially if they're cleverly mixed with human writing. This creates an environment of uncertainty even for those trying to counter disinformation, as the tools themselves aren't perfect. When it comes to safeguarding the LLMs themselves, while commercial models, like Claude Sonnet from Anthropic, tend to have stronger safeguarding policies and often refuse malicious requests, as one source found in a test open-source models.
Like Llama or Grok.
Exactly. Models like Grok 1 or Llama 3 are generally considered more vulnerable to producing such content. They can be prompted, sometimes aggressively, to generate highly confrontational and blameful messages, even using extremely offensive language. The inherent randomness, the stochasticity in how LLMs generate text makes full prevention of harmful output incredibly difficult, even for their creators. It's hard to completely lock them down.
So even the most sophisticated AI can be unpredictable, and open source models, while offering immense potential for good, also pose a particular risk for malicious use because they're less controlled.
Exactly. And here's a paradox. Despite Russia's public narrative about building its own autonomous AI infrastructure, independent of the West, our sources indicate that Russian actors reportedly show a continued preference for Western AI tools when their domestic AI falls short.
Really? They're using Western AI for their ops?
Apparently so, in some cases. This reliance on foreign technology fundamentally undermines their own state narratives about self-sufficiency and, crucially, creates a significant vulnerability for them. They become dependent on systems they cannot fully control, audit, or replicate domestically.
That's truly fascinating. It shows a kind of pragmatic gap between their political rhetoric and their actual operational reality. What about the regulatory responses to all this? Are governments and international bodies managing to keep up with the rapid pace of AI development and its potential misuse?
Well, they are certainly trying. The EU AI Act, which was adopted in May 2024, is genuinely a groundbreaking piece of legislation globally. It takes a risk-based approach.
Risk-based?
Meaning stricter regulations apply to higher-risk AI products, recognizing that not all AI carries the same potential for harm. You regulate an AI controlling critical infrastructure much more tightly than, say, an AI recommending movies. Its aim is to encourage the development and deployment of safe and trustworthy AI within the EU, which of course comprises many NATO member states.
Makes sense, but does it cover everything?
No, and that's the key limitation. The Act doesn't apply to AI systems used purely for military or defense purposes. Nor does it generally apply to open source AI systems, unless they are monetized or fall under specific categories like prohibited AI practices or transparency obligations for high-risk systems.
Ah, so the open source loophole again.
Exactly. This exclusion of many open source AI models, which our sources have shown can be prompted to generate malign content, poses significant risks related to security, ethics, and the proliferation of harmful applications, according to one analysis. It's a known gap.
So there's a clear pathway for open source AI to be potentially exploited by malicious actors despite the best intentions of the regulation.
Indeed. In addition to the AI Act, the Digital Services Act, or DSA, also strengthens Europe's response to illegal content and disinformation more broadly. It establishes stringent standards for online platforms, including critical transparency requirements mandating them to share data with researchers, for example. It requires disclosure of their content moderation operations and gives users enhanced control over algorithmic feeds, which often inadvertently prioritize sensational or divisive content. These regulations are crucial steps in the right direction for accountability, but the challenge remains immense, just given the unparalleled speed of AI development and the sheer ingenuity of malicious actors finding workarounds.
It's clear that AI is a double-edged sword, isn't it? While it offers immense possibilities for progress, it also presents incredible challenges for digital safety and the integrity of our information environment. Understanding these new frontiers, both in terms of compliance for organizations and personal privacy for individuals, is just more critical than ever. And again, resources like www.compliancehub.wiki and www.myprivacy.blog offer invaluable insights into navigating this rapidly changing digital world, providing practical tools and knowledge to help you stay ahead of the curve. So bringing this all together, what does this mean for us, for the everyday people listening right now, for our societies or democracies, even just our daily lives? The impacts seem to ripple far, far beyond just what we read online, don't they? They seem to get into the very fabric of our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. If we connect all these threads to the bigger picture, the real-world consequences of these FEMI campaigns are incredibly significant. They affect public trust, social cohesion, and even concrete policy making in really profound ways. Perhaps the most immediate and corrosive impact is the erosion of trust.
Trust in everything.
Pretty much. Disinformation directly aims to weaken confidence in national institutions, in governments, in the media, in the electoral process itself. We've seen this reflected in plummeting public trust metrics. For instance, one source cited that only 36% of Germans reported high or moderately high trust in their federal government in 2023. That's significantly below the OECD average. When citizens don't trust their institutions, the very foundation of a stable, functioning democracy begins to crack.
So it's chipping away at the very foundations of democratic societies, almost from the inside out, like termites.
That's a good, if unsettling, analogy.
Yeah.
And this erosion of trust leads directly to social division and sometimes actual unrest. Disinformation deliberately exacerbates dissatisfaction among citizens. It polarizes society on sensitive issues, racial divides, environmental topics like the Dakota Access Pipeline controversy, where, remember, they amplified both sides just to fuel conflict.
Right, fueling the fire.
And it can fuel real-world protests and even violence, as we saw so vividly in those Southport and Dublin incidents, where knife attacks were falsely and immediately linked to migrants online, leading directly to widespread unrest and riots. Migration-related disinformation, in particular, seems very effective at normalizing hostility towards migrants, refugees, and minorities. And this, in turn, can be used to justify more xenophobic policies down the line. These narratives don't just stay online, they spill out into our streets and dramatically affect real people's lives and safety.
And if public trust and social cohesion are being deliberately undermined like this, how does that affect actual governance and policy? Does it really shift political decisions?
It absolutely can. Hostile narratives, especially pervasive ones, can directly shape the policy agenda and certainly complicate evidence-based decision-making. It makes it harder for governments to act rationally or even for the public to support necessary, if unpopular, measures. Well, this is particularly true in areas like border management, asylum, and immigration policy. For example, those invasion narratives, which deliberately exaggerate the numbers of irregular arrivals and portray migrants solely as a threat, are often weaponized to justify calls for securitizing migration, pushing for more restrictive and often inhumane policies that may not actually be based on accurate data or effective solutions. Ultimately, disinformation undermines democratic processes at their very core. It can manipulate public opinion, weaken political opponents, undermine electoral integrity, and its impact extends far beyond just election outcomes. It aims to continuously destabilize political systems. It's like a constant low-grade assault on democracy itself, eroding its legitimacy day by day.
Given this really pervasive and insidious threat, what are the countermeasures? How can we as societies and as individuals build resilience against these sophisticated attacks? What actually works?
Building resilience is absolutely crucial, and it's definitely a multifaceted effort. There's no single silver bullet. On the front lines, you have the detection and fact-checking organizations, groups like Corrective in Germany, DPA Fact-Checking, AFP Fact and Check, Deutsche Welle, many others globally. They combine traditional hoax debunking with really robust investigative journalism, trying to follow the money and the digital trails to expose the sources.
But they face challenges, right?
Huge challenges. Fact-checking faces significant hurdles from those evolving AI technologies we discussed. Audio-visual disinformation, deepfakes, are just much harder and more time-consuming to detect and verify than plain text. Furthermore, not all disinformation generates the same level of engagement or impact. So a blanket fact-checking approach trying to debunk everything can be impractical, maybe even counterproductive, as it might inadvertently give more oxygen to fringe narratives that would otherwise fade away. It's a resource allocation problem, too.
So it's a constant race against new technology and just sheer volume of content. What about governmental initiatives? Are states actively trying to defend themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Governmental bodies are actively involved in this fight, more and more so. German ministries, for instance, the Federal Ministry of the Interior, the Foreign Office, along with their Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, are heavily engaged in fighting disinformation and FEMI. This includes establishing interdepartmental working groups to ensure close exchange on hybrid threats and constant monitoring of the information space, attempting to anticipate and react to emerging campaigns before they gain too much traction.
Okay, so beyond those official responses and the professional fact checkers, what about empowering individuals? What can we, the listeners tuning in, actually do to protect ourselves and our communities from this stuff?
That's really where media and information literacy, or MIL, comes in. And it's absolutely essential for building societal resilience from the ground up. MIL programs aim to support citizens, all of us, in understanding the complex media ecosystem we live in now and developing the critical thinking skills needed to evaluate information for ourselves, asking questions like, who created this, why, what's the evidence?
Learning to question what we see.
Exactly. There are also approaches like pre-bunking, which are based on inoculation theory from psychology.
Pre-bunking, like debunking, but before it happens.
Kind of, yeah. It means preemptively exposing people to common disinformation tactics and narratives, showing them how manipulation works so they're less susceptible when they encounter those tactics in the wild later. It's like giving people a cognitive vaccine against misinformation.
I like that analogy, a vaccine.
But there's a challenge here too. MIL levels vary widely across the EU, for example. Countries like Finland and the Netherlands have comparatively high digital skills and media literacy levels among their populations, but rates are much lower in places like Romania and Bulgaria. This highlights a critical disparity in societal resilience, creating vulnerable populations that are easier targets.
So a strong defense requires everyone to be equipped with these critical thinking tools. What about a more proactive, maybe strategic approach to countering FEMI, going beyond just reacting to stuff after it's already spread?
Yes. That's increasingly seen as necessary. Beyond simply mitigating the immediate impact of a campaign, there's a recognized need to proactively address the adversary's underlying strategic goals. This includes developing and coordinating effective counter-narratives, not just debunking, but offering compelling alternative stories that can genuinely resonate with target audiences. It also involves actively disrupting those coordinated, inauthentic networks at their source.
How do you do that?
Advanced behavioral analysis, looking for patterns of bot activity, and cross-platform monitoring are crucial for detecting coordinated bot and automated account activity much earlier. This allows for more precise and effective interventions, like platform takedowns or warnings. It's really about trying to be several steps ahead, not just constantly reacting to what is already spread virally.
And there are inherent challenges in this whole counter-FIMI fight itself, aren't there? You mentioned earlier it seems almost symbiotic at times, where the very act of exposing these campaigns can inadvertently benefit the attackers.
That's a critical and, frankly, somewhat unsettling point raised in the sources. The counterfaming community itself, the researchers, the journalists, the fact-checkers exposing this stuff, has apparently become an overt target of exploitation for Russian operations.
How does that work?
Well, our sources indicate that Russian actors sometimes leverage the exposure of their own campaigns when they get written about or reported on to argue internally for more funding and commission new projects. They essentially create a symbiosis where both sides, the attackers and the defenders, inadvertently feed on each other. When a campaign is exposed, they can spin it as proof of their effectiveness, securing more resources from the Kremlin to do it again, maybe better next time.
Wow, that's a perverse incentive structure.
It really is. And it means the focus for defenders needs to shift, not just reacting to observed tactics, but developing a more coordinated, strategic, and proactive defense that explicitly considers this feedback loop. Furthermore, developing effective legal tools to address what's sometimes called awful but lawful content.
Awful but lawful.
Yeah, content that is deeply manipulative, misleading, or harmful, but doesn't technically break any existing laws like hate speech or defamation. This area is still developing, largely because of legitimate concerns around protecting freedom of expression. It creates this tricky gray area where intervention is difficult, even when the harm is obvious. It's a constant tightrope walk between security and liberty.
It's a complex and clearly continuous battle for the truth in the digital realm, isn't it? One that touches every single aspect of our lives. What stands out to you, the listener, from this deep dive into the world of information warfare and AI's evolving and often alarming role? We've seen how pervasive and incredibly sophisticated these campaigns are, but also the dedicated efforts underway to counter them. Perhaps the most provocative thought to leave you with today is this. In a world where artificial intelligence can effortlessly craft believable fictions and malicious actors are constantly seeking to exploit our deepest anxieties, how do we, as individuals, cultivate the critical thinking and the digital resilience necessary to truly protect our own minds and our communities? How do we ensure that our informed decisions remain truly our own? And remember, for further insights and practical tools to help navigate these complex digital challenges, do visit our sponsors at www.compliancehub.wiki and www.myprivacy.blog. Join us next time on The Deep Dive for another journey into being well-informed.